If you're an Eli Roth fan, then maybe you'll be happy that because Green Inferno took so long to come to theaters, this year we actually got to see two Eli Roth directed films. And the second is Knock Knock. So Knock Knock is a remake of a 1970s horror movie, Death Game. In Knock Knock, we have Keanu Reeves as our main character. He's a devoted husband, a loving father, and while his family is out on vacation, he gets stuck at home because he has to do some work. Well, he's home alone at night, there's a rainstorm outside, and suddenly he gets a knock on the door. Now, he lives in a pretty secluded area. Well, not secluded area, but he's like the only one still living on his neighborhood at that point because everyone else is out and about. So he takes these two gorgeous women in and is like, okay, you can use my phone, you can dry your clothes, all that stuff. But then these two women start coming on to him. Wants no part of it though because he's a devoted husband, but then these two women, they seduce him. And now he can't get rid of them, and now here is the thriller part of this movie. That's Knock Knock in a nutshell, and I'm quite honestly surprised that it's an Eli Roth film. There's a lot of it that doesn't feel like his typical stuff. It feels like he's trying to do something a little different in the horror thriller genre. And I have to commend him a little bit for doing something a little bit out of his comfort zone in the horror department. Because he's more into really gory films. And in all honesty, Knock Knock has no gore whatsoever in it. Yes, there's this time where a character gets stabbed by a fork in the shoulder, but the only blood you see is the blood around the fork coating the shirt. It's nice to see him doing something a little different, and maybe this is more of his art indie sort of film take on the horror genre, though it is a remake. I thought Keanu Reeves was really good in this movie. In this movie, he feels more human than he's been in years. I totally buy him as a likable character and a devoted husband and a nice father. There's something about him that's just very likable, down to earth, and I easily sided with his character in this movie. The two women are really good in this movie too, but they're really good at playing the really crazy, slutty girls. Towards the second half of the movie, you see that they're clearly out of their mind, and this is all some weird, twisted game to them. And it's nice to see sort of like the slutty type girls in horror movies turn out to be the villainous characters. I thought it was a very interesting concept, and I'd like to see Death Game just so I know where this movie came from. I thought the sexual tension was pretty nice, and it gave the whole film a weird, uneasy feeling, especially between Keanu Reeves and these two girls. It's pretty twisted, and it's a little fun, but overall, it's not really as horrifying as I'd like it to be. Granted, it might be a little bit more of a thriller than a horror movie, but while it was a fun movie to me, it lacked a lot of the suspense and the drama and a lot of the things that I really wanted to be in this movie. There's a lot of interesting shots through the movie that makes it feel like Eli Roth's trying to do something a little bit different, a little bit more artistic, such as the long shots that go through the house, the main hall, and the bedroom. They do that about 3 times throughout the movie, and the scenery changes a little bit each time. What definitely reminds me of it being an Eli Roth film is the use of comedy in it. This might have made it a little bit less suspenseful and less tense for me, because there was a lot of times where I couldn't tell if it was meant to be funny or if it was meant to be serious. There's a lot of weird, awkward humor throughout the movie that sometimes it really works, while other times it breaks away from the tension and the seriousness it could have been, and sometimes I don't know if it's really meant to be serious or just done badly. But at the same time, that gives a lot of really funny, quotable lines throughout this movie. Like, I can totally see a lot of people re-quoting Keanu Reeves when he's tied to the chair towards the end of the movie, where he's just cursing at these ladies. I think the main reason that keeps this movie from getting an average score from me is the ending. Absolutely hated the ending. Now, I've seen a lot of horror movies and thrillers where the ending turns out to be bad for our main character, but the way that Knock Knock does it doesn't really feel justified. And In a way, it reminded me a lot of the ending for The Counselor, but the ending for The Counselor actually sort of worked way better than the ending for Knock Knock. It feels like there's little justice in this movie, especially when you're so invested in Keanu Reeves, but then it sort of tries to make you feel like maybe the girls are the good ones and maybe they're the right ones, but it's just like, what? Even though I hated the ending, there are two moments in the ending where I really liked. One of them happens to be Keanu Reeves buried in the ground with only his head sticking out, and he's trying to break out to try to do something on his phone and then pushes the wrong button. That leads to a pretty hilarious moment. And then the final line in the movie was really funny as well. But overall, the ending just really sucked. In the end, I found it quite entertaining, but not entertaining enough to be called a good movie. I found it was a little fun, I liked the characters, and I thought it was acted pretty well. But instead of being tense and scary, it was a little bit more funny than I would like it to be, and the ending really sucked. So overall, I think I'm going to give Knock Knock 2 stars. So have you seen Knock Knock? What did you think about it? Go ahead and comment. If not, what is your favorite... No, actually scratch that. What is the worst remake horror film you've seen? There's way too many for me to pick a worst. As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was just my opinion.